Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for attending Laurier's Milton Lecture series, and welcome to our April lecture. This series runs the second Wednesday of the month, October to May at 7 p.m. So welcome or welcome back. We are so glad to have you. This is our second last lecture of the series, so make sure you tune in next month as well. My name is Carolyn, and I work for Wilfrid Laurier University, and we are so proud to be partners with the Milton Public Library on this absolutely incredible series. Some housekeeping for you all. You've all been muted on entry with videos turned off. We have time carved out for questions, so if you have them, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. The lecture is being recorded and will be shared via email by the library in the near future. Before we begin the program, we would like to acknowledge that Wilfrid Laurier University and its campuses are located on the shared traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We recognize, honor, and respect these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters on which Laurier is now present. Perhaps you're joining us from another location this evening. And if that's the case, I would encourage you to take a moment to reflect and acknowledge the traditional territories on which you reside. Acknowledging this reminds us of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work. I'm excited to introduce tonight's topic and speaker, partnering for Planetary Health, All Roads Lead to Milton, with Dr. Deborah MacLatchy. Deborah MacLatchy was appointed President and Vice-Chancellor of Wilfrid Laurier University on July 1st, 2017. And as President, she has spearheaded the development of a 5-year institutional strategic plan, which focuses the university's direction in 2 interconnected themes: thriving community and future readiness. During her tenure at Laurier as President and previously as Provost, she has championed equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives and indigenization, including overseeing the creation of a community of practice model to accelerate advancement in EDI initiatives and indigenization throughout the university. She's been renewed for a second 5-year term as president, 2022 to 27. Dr. MacLatchy began her academic career at the University of Winnipeg and the University of New Brunswick, serving in a number of senior roles at UNB, including the Dean of Science, Applied Science and Engineering. She joined Laurier in 2007 as Dean of the Faculty of Science, and in 2009, was appointed Provost and Vice President Academic. In her early years at Laurier, Dr. MacLatchy helped lead the launch of the Laurier Institute for Water Science and the Laurier Center for Women in Science. She's an active researcher and graduate student supervisor with a focus on ecotoxicology. She holds an honors BSc in biology from Acadia University, PhD in zoology from the University of Manitoba, and completed postdoctoral work at the University of Guelph. Dr. MacLatchy is a founding fellow and a past chair of the science directors of the Canadian Rivers Institute, and is a past president and council member of the Canadian Society of Zoologists. She holds an honorary doctorate from Acadia University. It is such a pleasure to have you this evening, Deborah. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'll pass it along to you.
Well, thank you very much, Carolyn, and it's wonderful to be here tonight with everybody in Milton, and I thank you very much for that very generous introduction, and to thank you as well for the land acknowledgement. And I do acknowledge that I'm giving this lecture from Kitchener-Waterloo, which is located on the Haldimand Tract. This land, like Milton, is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, and symbolizes the agreement to share, protect our resources, and not to engage in conflict. And it's especially important for my talk tonight that I acknowledge as a settler that many of the places and communities that have inspired me as a scientist and as a person have been and continue to be gathering places that are home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples from across Turtle Island. And acknowledge them reminds us of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work, and that we recognize, honor, and respect these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and water. So if we go to the next slide, I'm really thrilled tonight to be able to talk a little bit about our journey as a university, Wilfrid Laurier University, to develop our Milton campus, and also a little bit about my path and how it parallels and connects with what we're planning for Milton. As indicated in the title, planetary health is a theme for this presentation, and planetary health can be defined as the health of human civilization and the state of the natural systems on which it depends. So in other words, it's a recognition that our very existence depends on the overall health of the planet. As ecosystems are degraded, the conditions for our own survival are diminished. And as those same ecosystems thrive, so can humans. So studying with a planetary health lens can inspire students to look at the intersection of human and environmental health and foster new thinking and innovations, including in areas such as clean and green technology, climate change management, community health, and sustainable development. It also lends itself to ensuring that we think about challenges ethically and on the scale of generations. And this focus is especially suited to the Milton campus, which will be adjacent to Greenbelt lands and the Niagara Escarpment. And so if we go to the next slide, in preparation for this talk, I've been thinking about my own personal road to Laurier and to our Milton campus. And my journey is very much framed by places that were ecologically and educationally inspiring to me, as well as by the people in my life. And so this picture is of me and my dad and my younger sister, Laura. Until I was 6, we lived in Vancouver in the area called Point Grey. It's the area where University of British Columbia is. My dad was a graduate student there at the time. Vancouver is situated on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And this is Jericho Beach, which was very close to the house that I grew up in until I was 6 years old, and was one of the formative areas where I can remember spending time in those sort of boundless hours of childhood, playing in the sand and being in the beach and being on the water. This is Jericho Beach, and really was one of those formative areas that captured my imagination as a child. My dad, because he was a grad student, my parents didn't have a lot of money as well when we were really little, and so would spend a lot of time with us doing things that were free, being out in nature, going on walks and exploring. And so that was a really formative part of my childhood. And if we go to the next slide, a couple of the places in Vancouver that continued to make a difference for me when I was young, and then back when we lived out in BC for a year when I was a teenager. This is me with my mom and my sister Laura. My youngest sister Heather was going to places like the Vancouver Aquarium. It was just such an amazing educational piece. Or we're sitting in the photograph in front of the Vancouver Planetarium that really were awe-inspiring, looking at the heavens and also looking at aquatic life in those formative years of my childhood. And if we move to slide 5, or the next slide, that here I am in where I really consider the place that I grew up, which was in the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. My dad got a job at Acadia University, and so that's where I grew up during the time, and actually went to University at Acadia, as Carolyn mentioned, and was a biology student. The Annapolis Valley is in Mi'kmaq and is in the part of the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And as an undergraduate student, I had the opportunity to work in the biology labs and really muck around in all that Great Bay of Fundy mud and do work on invertebrates and fish, and was really inspired at that point to go to grad school. So that I did go to graduate school at the University of Manitoba and continued there to study about fish physiology, and was really learning at that time a lot of great skills about studying fish biochemistry and really understanding what makes fish tick, but it really wasn't satisfying to me as a science. I really wanted to do work that was really more implied and had more of an environmental focus. And as I moved along in my career, next slide, what I really became interested in is a question about what is it that we are doing as humans on the land that could cause stress in aquatic ecosystems, and begin really questioning whether or not some of our activities, whether it be agriculture, mining, oil refining, and sewage, were causing effects on the fish living downstream of these activities. And one of my main interests was piqued working in the area of pulp and paper, and some of the work that I began at the University of Guelph as a postdoctoral fellow with Dr. Glenn Vanderkraak was to, when we were starting to question sort of the late 80s and early 90s, if we go to the next slide, what the effects of pulp mill effluents were on fish. And so at this period of time, what we were finding was that fish downstream of pulp mills were having various changes that we could measure biologically. And if we look in the top left-hand corner of your screen, it's probably a little bit too small, but there's actually little bumps, they're called tubercles, on the fins of that male fish. And that's a fish that's living upstream of a pulp mill. But when you looked at the fish downstream, the males were very smooth and actually looked to have the fins of female fish. Also, at the same time, we were noticing, if you looked at the right-hand pictures, that the fish upstream had very healthy ovaries, so we're creating lots of eggs, but the fish who are living downstream had much smaller gonads and were making fewer eggs. We also noticed that they were older to get to maturity downstream of mills. They had decreased reproductive hormones. Their livers were all revved up to be detoxifying chemicals they were being exposed to. And so we saw all of these effects being made, but we didn't understand what is it that's coming out of pulp mills that are causing these effects. Much of this early work was done with colleagues, Dr. Kelly McKittrick and Dr. Mark McMaster, and these pictures are courtesy of them. And if we go to the next slide. So when I got my first job as a faculty member, it was the University of New Brunswick in St. John, and this was the question that really seized me. What is in effluent, pulp and paper mill effluent, that can affect adult fish and their reproduction? And I was really lucky at that time to live in the city of St. John, New Brunswick, which has the Irving Pulp and Paper Mill. And the mill really was interested in understanding the answers to those questions as well. First of all, they wanted to understand, is our mill having this effect on fish downstream? And if so, what can the mill do to ameliorate those effects? And so the first question that we were lucky enough to start being able to work in collaboration with the mill was to answer the question, is the mill having an effect? Well, it turns out that the Irving Pulp and Paper Mill sits on an estuary. An estuary is when you're on a river, and if you're on the coast, the tides comes up and then the tide goes down. And so you have this effect of both the downstream river water and the upstream tide. And so it's very, very complicated biologically to separate downstream effects that the mill might be having from upstream effects, because there really isn't that separation between downstream and upstream. And so we thought, well, there's other tools that we can use then to understand what's happening to the fish. And so I was lucky enough to have a great PhD student, Dr. Monique Dubé, who helped develop these mesocosm systems that we were able to use. We were able to take in water from the environment and combine it with pulp mill effluent in these artificial mesocosms with the fish living inside, and compare the effect of fish exposed to the effluent from fish not exposed to the effluent. And through these studies, we were able to identify that environmentally relevant concentration, the mill wasn't having a potential to have the effects on fish, but that there were waste streams within the mill that could have some effect at higher concentrations. And so we were able to take that information to switch to lab studies to then start to be able to identify what chemicals in the mill effluent could potentially have an effect. And I did that work with Doctors Mark Hewitt and Craig Milestone, who are still great collaborators to this day, and to so identify the chemicals, but then also work with the mill for engineering solutions so that those particular waste streams would be removed from the final effluent. And Irving Pulp and Paper has a very successful process, reverse osmosis, that is able to make sure that the final effluent does not have this effect on fish downstream of the mill. Since that time, we've done a lot of work continuing with the mill. And right now, one of the things that we're working with in our lab at Laurier, this is work I do with my research coordinator, Dr. Andrea Lister, is to understand the effects of juvenile fish growth and development of the effluent. So does the effluent have the potential to affect juvenile fish growth and development? So this has been actually a 20-year plus project. Science takes a long time when you're hypothesis testing to understand, you start with a very large question like, does the pulp and paper mill effluent have an effect, down to identifying what those biological effects and the sources of those effects might be. If we go to the next slide. During that research journey, I had started some administrative work at the University of New Brunswick. I was the Dean of Science, Applied Science and Engineering, and had the opportunity to come to Wilfrid Laurier University in 2007 and move to Kitchener-Waterloo. What drew me to Wilfrid Laurier University at the time was the really strong national undergraduate reputation that Laurier had and continues to have, where it focuses very much on the holistic development of our students, academically and in their co-curricular and extracurricular activities, to ensure that they are graduating as really engaged citizens, not just of the university, but of the community. There was a growing master's and PhD programs, which thrilled me as a research scientist. The multi-campus community engagement, being very embedded, not just at the Waterloo campus, but also at our Brantford campus, as well as the collaborative and collegial faculty and staff. And when I came in 2007, I never could have imagined that I would be here talking to you in 2022 about this amazing university that has such a strong foundation in liberal arts and sciences and professional programs, with research strengths that range from community engagement, environments and sustainability, international affairs and health. And you can just see the collection of research centers that I've identified here. Our Center for Cold Regions and Water Science, the great international work that we do through the Balsillie School of International Affairs and our International Migration Research Center, the Centers for Community Research, Learning and Action, Community Health Research, Center for Physically Active Communities, just so many great things that are happening, that are very community focused, and also very focused on problem solving, on understanding what is it that we can do to really make an impact, whether it's on international affairs or whether it's on environments or whether it's in community. We also have growing expertise in entrepreneurship, including social innovation. One of my goals for Wilfrid Laurier University is to be one of the top social innovation universities in the country. I think we're 80% of the way there. And I think, as I'll talk about a little bit later, I think Milton has a great role to play in that as well. In the entrepreneurship space, we have the Lazaridis Institute for the Management of Technology Enterprises, which really works on supporting Canadian companies to scale up. We've got the Great Women Entrepreneurship Center. We've got innovation centers throughout our campuses, Launchpad in Brantford, startup lab in the Lazaridis School, the Faculty of Arts, the C3 Innovation Lab, Science Maker Lab, the Library Maker Space. There's so much happening in every corner of the institution on entrepreneurship. Also very excited that, one of the things that Laurier has really worked on and really does a great job in is multi-campus governance and operations. We don't talk about the university having satellite campuses, as you might hear from other universities. We have 2 campuses. We will have 3 campuses. And what we want to do is grow each of those campuses to their optimal number of students in a very integrated way, with a very much of a local community focus. If we go to the next slide. And so really right now we're on this journey to move from 2 campuses to 3. And I'm so excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about that. And if you just click the next slide. That, this past summer, we had the great opportunity to have the province, including with the MPP Parm Gill, the Premier was there, as well as the Minister of Colleges and Universities, to announce that Laurier and Conestoga College would be coming to the Milton Education Village, and to bring university and college education to Milton. So excited to be there, and just want to really acknowledge that we would not be here without all of the efforts of the town of Milton, especially Mayor Gord Krantz, and all the efforts and dedication that the mayor, in collaboration with Laurier, has put into this over 10 years in order to get us to this point. Go to the next slide. And when we think about what it is that we're going to be focusing on in the Milton campus, our campus vision is to focus on STEAM. And STEAM is a combination of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And so you may have heard of STEM, what they call STEM disciplines before, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. But for Laurier, given our real foundation in the liberal arts and professional programs, we want to ensure that our students that are doing STEM disciplines are well-rounded and have all the skills that the arts and professional programs bring to education as well. So preparing students to being able to ethically answer society's big questions and challenges is really important to us. In that lens of planetary health, as is incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing. Want to be able to recruit and retain diverse students, faculty, and staff in an inclusive environment. We very much want to ensure that the community environment at our Milton campus reflects the communities in which we are in, so that reflects the Greater Toronto Area, Halton region. If you go to the next slide. And when we think about the Milton campus, it's really about building on our existing research strengths and adding new faculty members and new subjects to enhance that strength. And so one of the areas of research focus that we are planning to develop for Milton is our proposed Center for Urban Watershed Research. And as our urban populations in Canada continue to grow, one of the more pressing challenges that we do have is managing stormwater, managing water retention, and managing as the population grows and as our built structures grow with urbanization. And so we're exploring partnerships in Halton region, including Conservation Halton, who has been an amazing partner through our whole journey as we've developed our plans for Milton. And we're already in the process of applying to the federal government for research funds to begin this proposed Center for Urban Watershed Research, and really excited. There's also, because we're on the Greenbelt, and also will be, there's protected area in the area of the campus, looking at a field station for ecological research. Now, I mentioned before our strengths in entrepreneurship, including social entrepreneurship. So one area we've also been very active, even before the campus is started, is to develop an innovation hub with our partners, Conestoga College and Haltech, and that's a really key area that we're moving into. And so this is just a little bit of a vision here. It is a conceptual plan only. Our build out will develop, and it will take place over many, many years of what our campus potentially will look like. I just want to give credit to Brooke McElroy Architectures, a firm that we've been working closely with to help us develop the campus master plan. And so those of you that are familiar with the Milton Education Village site in Milton, this is just the edge of the Mattamy Cycling Center, so the velodrome, right to the right-hand side of your screen, the little white circle. And the rest of what you see, the built, are the concept for the campus. You can see a lot of green roofs there, a lot of green trees. You know, as I show this, really, as we build out this campus, you know, we're building a 21st century campus. We're building a campus that we can use all of our best knowledge that we have about how to build sustainably, how to build net zero, how to make this a campus that will be there 100 years from now. So we go to the next slide. And so we have a number of guiding principles that we're using in order to develop the campus master plan, which will then guide how it is that we build this campus out. So our first guiding principle is to create a campus whose DNA is rooted in sustainability and innovation. And so that everything that we do has a lens on it around sustainability, around energy conservation, and ensuring that we're using the most innovative techniques possible as we build out this campus. Go to the next slide. And as I've noted through this talk, you know, really focusing on Indigenous worldviews and perspectives in the design and programming of the campus is really critical to us. We really want to ensure that as we're going forward with this, that we're really focusing on Indigenous placekeeping, which is reimagining the urban planning concept of placemaking. Now, placemaking really focuses on a people-centered approach, whereas placekeeping from an Indigenous lens really prioritizes ecological, historical, and cultural relationships to place. And so as go forward, we want to develop Indigenous placekeeping principles to act as a framework for future placekeeping opportunities on campus. And we've been very lucky as we've built out this Milton campus master plan to be working with Laurier's Indigenous Education Council, which contains community members from our local Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as Indigenous partners from Six Nations and urban members of our Indigenous communities who are helping us ensure that this placekeeping principle will be a part of everything that we do. If we go to the next slide. We also want to recognize and honor the rich diversity of everyone who will be a part of this campus and be a part of our campus community. So having a thriving, inclusive campus where everyone can belong and thrive is not only a part of our campus vision, but it is part of our overall mission as a university to have thriving communities. And this again will be a focus as we develop out our campus plan. Go to the next slide. We also want to ensure that we have personal and community connections to the design of buildings or open spaces and a network of pedestrian greenways. And I'll show you some more pictures of the vision here of ensuring that our campus is very open to the public and open to the citizens of Milton to come for a walk, to come for a class, to come for a lecture, to come for an evening activity. I think if you remember old style universities very often are sort of walled buildings around a central quad. And, the idea there to really separate out town and gown. But our Milton plan is a very, very different kind of approach to ensuring that we are absolutely an engaged part of the community. Go to the next slide. Also want to create a lively, healthy, and safe campus whose design promotes well-being through learning, socializing, experiencing nature. I don't know about you, but I'd love it if we could actually have that kind of skating rink somewhere close to campus. We go to the next slide. It is going to be an overall central theme of this campus that we are encouraging land stewardship, and that we will continue to reinforce the visual and physical connections between our campus, the Greenbelt, and the Niagara Escarpment. So even as we build our buildings, to build them in a way that we don't lose sight and we don't lose focus of being a part of the greater whole of the Greenbelt and the Niagara Escarpment. Next slide. So as part of that, we will ensure that we are showcasing the natural ecologies, preserving the green belt. As I noted before, we are also planning the Urban Water Research Center, which very much will focus on research and stormwater treatment within the Greenbelt lands. So really looking at new and innovative ways of controlling stormwater, ensuring that the water that returns to the environment is clean, and that it uses as much capacity of the natural waterways in order to be able to treat it. So we move from being very concrete artificial systems into much more natural plant-based systems. So if we go to the next slide. And that as part of this all is that this is really about a phased approach. And so that as we build out parts of the campus, it really is part of that multi-generation long-term view, of thinking about, how will our grandchildren or great-grandchildren experience the Milton campus? How is it that everything that we do today in the 2020s is going to, still be here 50, 80 years from now? We go to the next slide. And so before we finish up, I just want to give you a little bit of a timeline about where we're at for this campus. We're in our final land use approval processes with the region and with the town and our partners. We hope to have the first shovels in the ground in the fall 2022, with the first building opening, fingers crossed, in fall 2024. But we are planning that we will be starting our recruitment fall 2023. We'll start recruitment for our fall 2024 class. Some examples of the first programs that you'll see in Milton will be a BSc Computer Science, the Master of Education we're already doing here, and we'll continue. And then Laurier is also bringing some new programs, which Laurier doesn't yet do. So that includes Bachelors of Engineering and Software Engineering and Sustainable and Environmental Engineering, and also a real focus on environmental health sciences and One Health. So that integration, as we said, of ecosystem health and human health, and how there is that codependency, and how is it that we learn as humans to do better with that. Ultimately, we want to have a campus that fully integrates our educational and research programs, so that there is great synergy. So if you look at right now what the campus looks like, it looks like this. You can see the recycling center and the velodrome, and a lot of green land and trees, protected area, green belts. If we look at where we're going, the next slide, it's going to look something more like here. So here's the cycling center here. Here's that shot I showed you of the campus built, but here's what the land around it looks like. This is when we talk about the urban stormwater management center. Here's some urban, here's the stormwater areas here, but this is actually a research and innovation center. So there's faculty and graduate students and undergraduate students doing research projects on this, so that Milton becomes a national and a global leader in dealing with urban stormwater. And that my goal would be we have visitors coming from all over the world to see how it is that this can be done in an ecologically friendly way. It would include constructed wetlands that would be part of the research going on, but also be very open to the public, so that you can see here, there's public trails around this area, that we've got land-based ecological research happening, and that there's also lots of signs around this area explaining the type of research that's going on, explaining the flora that you're observing as you're going through. And so that really what we have at the end of the day is a very, as I said, very integrated campus with the community, and with the value of education in everything that we do, also able to engage the community. And so if we go to the next slide. And so this is my last slide, just to remind again and bring us full circle that, this is a campus based on planetary health. I hope that by showing some of the early work that I was involved in aquatic ecosystem health, that this campus is near and dear to my heart, and the vision of it to really focus on developing a campus that lives up to Laurier's current mission, and fully embodies our ability to excel at creating thriving communities where all the members of our comprehensive university can reach their potential. And from this foundation, we'll develop future-ready people who will transform where they live, work, and continue to learn. And in essence, that this Milton campus will be a place where we value our ecological, historical, and cultural relationships to people and to place. And so I thank you all very much for your time tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Auger, and I am from Milton Public Library. We are now going to begin the facilitating of the Q&A period. So if you have any questions, please use the Ask Question tab at the bottom of your screen. Dr. MacLatchy, thank you so much for sharing your strong vision of this new campus coming to Milton Public Library. It's a beautiful campus. The green space is spectacular. The vision is beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. And this couldn't be possible without all the partners that we have. And I really want to thank the Milton Library, because you actually are one of the partners that we're talking about right now. And what would it look like to have a community library and a university library in the Milton Education Village, and how educationally changing could that be for the community? So I think there's lots of great things still to come in our planning, and I'm really excited about where that's going.
So we've got Maria, wonderful vision and plans. Thank you for sharing.
You're very welcome, Maria.
I was just wondering, you said like how you can see in the design and the vision of the campus, how your earlier work has really, especially with the research and the ecological research plan for the storm water is really informing that. That's how did that all come together, that was the direction that you guys were going to go in and focusing on the national and global, like the stormwater research?
Well, a lot of that really grew out of the strengths and the faculty and the researchers we have at Laurier. We host the Center for Cold Regions and Water Science at our Waterloo campus. And one of the strengths of that campus, or that work from those two centers, is a partnership that we have with the government of the Northwest Territories. So for over 10 years, we've been working with our partners in the government of Northwest Territories, working with Indigenous communities to understand the challenges of climate change in the North, which are the effects of climate change are much more accelerated in our northern part of the country. But through that, I've developed a lot of expertise in water science, and wanted to then say, for southwestern Ontario, what are the pressing water issues? And in addition to point sources that you might have, for example, municipal sewage, urban stormwater is a growing and pressing need, and to do more research on. And so this will be an ideal place to do it. And as I mentioned, Conservation Halton's been an enthusiastic partner in supporting this research as well. So I think there's great opportunities for us. I'd also mention that have been working with Crozier Engineering on some preliminary work in this area. So great partners with Crozier Engineering, and excited to continue those partnerships, so that as we develop our engineering programs, our students are working on real life problems, right? That they're getting that experience within their programs, and as well as they go doing co-ops and being able to start their work lives. It's a great environment in Halton and Peel for the students as well.
That's wonderful. We do have another question from Abby. She loves that the curricular focus will be STEAM. Can you talk about some of the ideas you have for integrating the arts, humanities into engineering and science?
That's a really great question, and something that we're actively working on right now. As I noted, really our goal here is to ensure that the strengths that students get from a liberal arts education, whether it's good judgment, ethics, good writing skills, being able to understand intrinsic values, that the students are incorporating that into how they learn to be scientists and how they learn to be engineers. And so if the students are going to be learning about artificial intelligence, what are those other values that need to be part of that rather than just solving a technical challenge. So we're excited about that work. We're doing it now. How might some of that curriculum develop? So one of my colleagues, Dr. Heidi Northwoods, likes to talk focus a lot on an idea about the Niagara Falls. And so you can study the Niagara Falls from a lot of different perspectives. So you can understand, you can do it from a geological perspective. You can understand their uses as generation of power from an engineering perspective, but you can also talk about the history and the culture of the region and those pieces. And so figuring out in the curriculum, how do you design problems, design challenges, and so that you can really holistically look at them is one of the great things about taking a STEAM approach.
Great, thank you. A campus is all about students' experiences, and the design that you guys are creating is certainly taking that in mind about how the students will be living and thriving in this community that you're creating on this new campus. Are there any features that you're most excited to see come to fruition on this campus that will really, improve students' experiences as you build that 21st century? What are some, key campus features that you'll be implementing?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think, some things that, we can actually take from our experiences at Laurier, but ensuring that we have, student-specific gathering places, study spaces, group workspaces, so that there's their opportunity really that there's magnets to stay on campus and to really be a part of that campus life. But I think as we build out this campus, as we talk about building a campus that is going to be resilient for the long term through climate change, through the age that you design it in a way that it actually the students are experiencing the values that they're learning in class. And so, when we talk about, net zero or better buildings and how to learn to be engineers to design those buildings, that they're also in buildings that are demonstrating that in action, that they have projects. For example, I talked about the potential for undergraduate and graduate students to be working on research projects in the green belt, in the urban stormwater center. Those kinds of engagement will be critical. We also love at Laurier for the community to bring us challenges that they have to be able to do really immersive type of work. And so we'll be encouraging our community partners, whether from everywhere from, engineering to social science challenges, to bring them to our faculty and have our classes go at them. We've been a part at Laurier of a national program that's called City Studio, which was started at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, British Columbia, where municipalities actually bring challenges to the students, and the students then can tackle those challenges and give recommendations back to the city about how to make changes. Recently, one of our user experience design classes at the Brantford campus worked really closely with the city to be looking at measuring the health of the ice rinks in the community and giving information back to the city so they could better manage their ice rinks. So we love to have those kind of questions come into our campuses and have our students go at them.
So we have another question from Ian. So you may know that CN Rail is planning a hub location just down the street. Do you see the pollution and traffic generated from that location damaging the campus environment?
Thanks very much for that question. I hope that in this 21st century that we'll be working, able to work as a community with any organizations that are in the community to better develop ways of building and integrating into the community. We're happy as a university to have more conversations with CN Rail to understand how we can both coexist very, very healthily in the community.
So we got another question, which is great. Alina would like to know, will there be fish research conducted at the Milton campus as well?
Well, part of what we're looking at building will be some, I showed one of the pictures of mesocosms that I'd used many years ago at the University of New Brunswick. And so we're also looking at whether or not as part of our urban stormwater, we would be putting in some artificial mesocosms and being able to do some of those controlled types of experiments. So yes, we would very much like down the road to be able to do that kind of work in Milton.
Right. Yeah, I think we see university, like having your campus developed here in Milton, there's definitely going to be benefits to the community, not just the increase in student participation, but the type of research your institution will be doing will definitely improve the lives of those living in our community. Yes.
Well, that's great, and that's really our goal, to be a collaborative community partner, and that's what we like to do in Waterloo and Kitchener and Brantford, and are excited to do in Milton as well.
So on that note, on behalf of Wilfrid Laurier University and Milton Public Library, thank you, Dr. Lechy, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us this evening. Thank you also to all those of the attendees for joining us. A copy of tonight's presentation will be shared on Milton Public Library's YouTube page in the next few days. We will also be sharing all of the links for tonight in an email for those that are registered for the LMLS newsletter. And if you haven't yet registered, you can do so by going to MPL website beinspired.ca. So please be sure to register for our final lecture on May 11th. The topic will be Dene Health and the Wellness Research, the Decho First Nations and the driver's seat. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much.